This is all theater. This is all just political theater.
Political theater. Political theater.
Pure political
theater.
Theater.
Political theater.
The
nefarious,
significant and protracted
political theater for political theater's sake.
I yield back.
From Washington, this is Political Theater, Roll Call's review of the spectacle of politics on Capitol Hill and across the country. I'm Jason Dick. The first month of Donald Trump's second presidential term has caught a lot of people off guard. It should not have. Trump and his allies told people what they were going to do, and now they're doing it. He's also been around a while, so it shouldn't be a surprise the way that he conducts himself and conducts his business. Yet Democrats, the minority party, the opposition party, if you will, seem pretty flat-footed. But fear not. There may be a lodestar, to use a term that we haven't heard for a little while, in the offing, and that comes to us courtesy of our friend Brandon Wetherbee, who is the founder of Recommend If You Like. He's the host of a podcast that's been around even longer than Political Theater, You, Me, Them, Everybody, and a good friend. And he has a column that he wrote for Roll Call about what the Democratic Party could learn from a few professional wrestlers. Brandon, welcome back.
Thanks for having me. I never said fear not.
Fear not. No.
You said fear not.
I said fear not. Yeah, I never tell people so much what to think or feel. I think, though, that's less about overall world state of things. Just simply, I think fear not, I may have just used as a cliche to say, like, we have a point of discussion that we can go to. But yes, by all means, you can be afraid.
I'm just trying to preach everyone should be fearful at all times and live on edge and full of anxiety.
That sounds about right.
No, it's not. I'm joking. I apologize. I'm joking. I don't agree with that whatsoever.
No, I know.
Thanks for letting me derail this instantly. I apologize.
No, that's again. This actually is a good segue to the first wrestler that we're going to talk about. Then, So your column, which we'll put in the show notes, is a looking at the careers specifically of three wrestlers at different times in the wrestling's more recent past, dating back to the 80s up to the current time. And again, the context for this, sometimes I still find it amazing that not very many people know that Donald Trump is in the WWE Wrestling Hall of Fame and has been friends with Vince McMahon and Linda McMahon for decades, and has nominated Linda McMahon, who is kind of a lot of the brains and the operations, the logistics person for sure behind WWE, and has been for years, to not just the education department secretary position, but she was the small business administrator in Trump 1. So there's a lot of wrestling connections that Trump has. He's as the Trump organization hosted several WrestleManias. I mean, the connections are deep, but it always is like, oh wow, that just is so off the wall. It's like, no, and also you should read Brandon and Chris Kelly's book from 8 years ago, in which there was the Donald, how Trump turned politics into professional wrestling.
To make it even more simple for people that are instantly turned off by wrestling, but not turned off by quote unquote legit sports, UFC and WWE are now owned by the same company. They're under the same umbrella. And Dana White is also in Trump's orbit. And for a few months, Vince McMahon technically had more voting shares than Dana White before his current debacle forced him off the board. But these are literally, they're in bed together. UFC and WWE. So even if you're like, oh, this wrestling thing is silly, I don't care. Fine. That's fine. Let's go with the organization that's all over ESPN, that is the fastest growing sport in the world, which is UFC. Trump is equally a part of that. You could take the exact same lessons when it comes to UFC and apply them to WWE when it comes to speaking and the gift of gab. So this is applicable even if you think that the wrestling part is silly, even if you think the sporting stuff is too fake. It doesn't matter. This is all applicable today and has been for 4 decades.
And I should state too that aside from just I think the pretty demonstrated argument that you've made over several years, which is that Trump communicates in a narrative that would be familiar to anybody watching wrestling. He also connects with a very large part of the population, who does like wrestling, who does attend, events that bring in, thousands of people in person and millions of people for broadcast or streaming. So, I mean, like, whether or not, again, your tastes go towards watching NFL Sunday or Monday Night Raw or whatever, like, this is a way that he has not only conducted his own construction of his own narratives and communicating, but also he's connecting with people in that in that world.
Correct, and he's doing it, and it sounds very weird to say this, but in 2025. Professional wrestling is not nearly as racist as it was when Trump first got into bed with the McMahons. It is somewhat progressive at times. There's a large and thriving and beautiful independent scene that would appeal way more to the far left than the far right. But because it's wrestling, there is a little something for everyone, and there are still racial stereotypes and gender stereotypes, and people play with those to their advantage, and they're able to appeal to a wide swath of people that neither party is able to do at this point in time, and hasn't probably since like September 2001. The approval rating for wrestling, the approval rating for anything can't be that bad, or else you have go home heat, which is very important. If everybody hates the product, then no one's going to watch it. But if you have one guy that's intentionally bad and one guy that's intentionally good, your classic face heel structure, you could thrive in theory forever. And it doesn't matter what's actually going on behind the scenes. WWE has proven that. Their stock has never been more valuable in the last year, and there have never been more allegations against Vince come out. But it doesn't matter, because that's not why people watch.
Right. So let's get back to your thesis, on your column, which is that in this world, which Trump is both comfortable in and a product of, and a contributor to, it's in good standing citizenship, if you will, of this world. There have been other people, as you alluded just now to, folks who have done well in wrestling, working for WWE, working for the McMahons, who have never been shy about their politics, and particularly the conservative, bona fides there. But there have been pretty progressive wrestlers, and they've done well for themselves. At the same time that they've furthered their careers, they've also, they've constructed their own narratives within this world that you could do worse in emulating in politics, in seeking to connect with people. So let's start with Roddy Piper, who, I mean, again, like I knew him as a wrestler as a kid, but I also knew him as being a movie star too, because he was in, most importantly in They Live.
Exactly. They Live is essentially should be it feels like should be the Democratic playbook right now. John Carpenter and Roddy Piper are telling you exactly what to do.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
I mean, the best line from that movie Piper wrote. The bubblegum line is a Piper line that he riffed on and brought to the set. So like that is an inspiring line. That is how to speak in catchphrases. But when it comes to the wrestling, he doesn't get the role without wrestling, so this all relates. When it comes to the wrestling, Piper was always himself and knew how to draw the most amount of heat. Now, a lot of this stuff was incredibly racist. Was then intentionally racist, was accidentally racist. Don't ever paint yourself half black. Don't want to Google that if you're uncomfortable in any way. Before WWE, he would do matches in Southern California and start to play, quote unquote, the Mexican national anthem on his bagpipes, because he was, anyways, and he would play La Cucaracha and get things thrown at him intentionally. He was the classic evil bad guy. But when he goes to the WWF, a lot of that stuff has to become more family friendly. He has the Piper's Pit segment. He is still a heel, but he's so popular, he's a tweener. That's someone that's a little bit of both, right? Piper never lied. Piper never lost to Hogan. He continued to work with Hogan for years, but never took the L. So
this is the same Hulk Hogan who helped, on the last night of the Republican National Convention, famously tearing his shirt and saying how much he loved Trump. And
the same Hulk Hogan that prevented the wrestlers from ever unionizing after WrestleMania. This is why Piper would years later go on Real Sports with Brian Gumbel and explain about how all of his friends were going to die before the age of 70 because of things like there was no union to protect them. They were worked to the bone, etc. Anyways, Piper was smart enough to realize, I'm going to always put myself in the spotlight. It doesn't matter what's going on around me. I am the most important guy. I'm fighting for me. I am number one. And if you tell people I am number one enough, they will believe it. It doesn't actually matter. He never actually had the WWF championship. He never had the big gold belt. It didn't matter. Piper made the story about him on his Piper's Pit segments. He made it about him. He understood how to conduct an interview regardless of who was in the room. And that's why his most famous clips, there's two of them. One involves Jimmy Snuka is bashing a coconut on the back of his head. Legit concussed the man. Not recommending that. The other one is with a jobber, and this is where you get the line.
Just when they think they got the answers, I change the questions.
Just when they think they've got the answers, I change the questions. He goes directly to camera, off the cuff, and says this, and this is exactly how to run everything in an era of chaos. Now, I understand that most respectable Democrats, most respectable anybody, doesn't want to think that this matters. I entirely disagree. The time for decorum is over, and it has been, and very few people have woken up to this. There are two people on the Democratic Party as of right now in power that I think understand this lesson, and it's AOC and Bernie, and I don't think that's a controversial statement. AOC gets it especially on Blue Sky, the new platform. She's literally leaving the forum that most Republicans are using. I'm not using Twitter anymore. That's over. I'm using AOC. And her most recent stuff in the past few days is the perfect example of this. I'm going to change this narrative. If you want to make this narrative about me, bring it on. It's about me now. And she's doing it perfectly in the same way Piper would do it.
I would also argue that Trump, even when he was not in office, he made the narrative, the politics of the Biden era really about him. I mean,
exactly.
Everything was sort of defined in reacting to him. He got the spotlight whenever he wanted. He could literally summon people to Mar-a-Lago for press conferences. He made it about him in a way that I think, I don't know whether it's just this hesitancy, among, his opponents. They're worried, that he'll, just masterfully destroy them or whatever. But he took some of these lessons too. And in terms of the, just when people think they have the answers, I changed the questions. As we're recording this, Trump threw a kind of a grenade into the budget process in the Senate. The Senate, not to get too wonky here, but the Senate said, we have a good idea of how to proceed on the budget reconciliation process, which is a way that they can pass things without having to worry about the filibuster. We're going to break it up into two chunks. The House wants to do one big chunk that has everything, tax cuts and money for the border and all this kind of stuff, kicking kids off food stamps, that kind of thing. And the Senate's like, no, we're going to do a quick win, and we'll start marking that up. We'll vote on it this week. And you could just see how proud of themselves they were that they got kind of the jump on the House. It's like, well, you guys are trying to figure it out and you're on recess. We're going to get to work here. And then today, Trump just says, as he's going into a meeting in Florida, it's like, I think they should have one bill.
Yeah.
And just, I mean, you could hear the kind of air go out, of the Senate, like, wait a second, but we voted on a motion to proceed.
Yeah.
And it's like, Trump doesn't care.
Doesn't matter.
He's in charge. You're not in charge, John Thune. Donald Trump's in charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the two biggest Piper examples in wrestling lore. But if you actually want to study this and you actually want your party to actually have a chance at winning, watch a lot of the late 80s, early 90s Piper and Vince McMahon on commentary together, because Vince was not very good on mic. Never really has been. He's way better post-Attitude Era as the evil character, as the evil chairman of WWE. Not a great announcer. Piper talks circles around him. That's how you need to approach this. So if you need to study something, study Piper and McMahon on mic together post WrestleMania 3 after he returns. So that's, I think, the easiest way to contextualize, like, oh, I could use this tomorrow. Here's how to do it. You're not going to be able to smash a coconut in somebody's head and get away with it, at least for a while. So that's some tangible, go to the network vault and figure out how to use these lessons.
Okay, let's leap forward. It's not necessarily a different generation, but it was a different era.
It's the next generation.
Next generation of wrestling. And let's talk about Kevin Nash now.
You know, the president has a State of the Union address every couple months. It's time the NWO had a State of the Union address. The only difference is I'm not going to lie to you.
Kevin Nash, formerly known as Diesel, and then back to Diesel when he would return to the WWE. Kevin Nash was a big, sexy, big dude. He used to play basketball. Him, Scott Hall,
6'10", right? Like
he's very tall. I don't know the exact, but he's massive, and there's a reason why all of his knees are screwed up. All of his knees, both of his knees are screwed up. From Michigan, from Detroit, left the WWF in 94, 95. He starts the NWO with Scott Hall, and Hulk Hogan is the surprise third member in 1996. It is the hottest wrestling faction probably ever, at least in terms of sales, and not in terms of influence, but definitely in terms of sales, for about 5 years. And Kevin Nash, like I said before, was an athlete. He's a basketball player. He understands that horrible things are said all the time. Kevin Nash was never holier than thou and always made sure to make the most amount of money, doing the least amount of physical damage to his body. That's brilliant. It's to me, that's exactly what this industry is about. It's about making the most amount of money in the smallest amount of time, staying at the top of the ticket, working with whomever, morals aside. Who cares about morals? The point is to win. The point is to make the most money. The Democrats, if they want to win this when it comes to Trump and use the wrestling thing, stop caring about morals. Morals don't matter. No one cares about morals, especially if the morals are I am against somebody. Against doesn't matter. Nash talks about this in his current podcast, how the things he would hear Trump say, it's like, yeah, that is locker room talk. It's not a good thing. No one's saying this is how the Democrats should talk. But to say, like, how dare he do those things? No, now you're just appealing to a bunch of people that didn't care about politics at all because this guy says the things he shouldn't say. It's the morning zoo idea of it all. That's pointless. Preaching ideals is pointless. Actually doing those things matters. But virtue signaling at this point and probably forever is a bad thing.
Well, and also it's a fundamental, I think, misunderstanding of some of the appeal of Trump. Not everybody who voted for Trump, thinks that he's so great when he talks about, how somebody's a terrible person or
Sure.
they're weak or says something really, just kind of off the charts bad, that offends people. Like, not everybody's on board with that, but there is a very distinct appeal for a significant amount of the electorate, I think, who they're like, that's my guy because he's just willing to say that stuff. He's willing to piss people off. He's willing to get people up in arms. And again, it just seems like in the last month, granted, the Democrats don't have a lot of levers of power, but there's so much. You only get so much of the attention economy, right? Mm-hmm. And if the big takeaway is that you're saying like that's mean, that's immoral, that's unacceptable, as opposed to saying like, hey, here's my constituent who just got laid off from FEMA. He'd much rather be like saving somebody's life right now in Kentucky, like this guy, but he doesn't have a job, and why is that? So instead of making that point and instead of personalizing it and making it something where this is what I stand for, it's always about like, this is so terrible, or awful. And that may be true. Like the way people are being treated.
No one's denying that, but that doesn't matter. The whole point is to motivate someone to get off their couch and to do something. Right. Usually awful things aren't doing it. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just the way it is. And it's
Well,
not a new thing either.
And you point out too in your column that just pointing out the fact that Trump did a bad thing that I don't agree with, which a lot of Democrats are saying, but is also acknowledging their powerlessness. Like nobody likes losers.
Yeah. This once again should not be complicated. No one, don't whine. Just stop it. Do something positive, or not, or shut up. Don't do it. You only have so many times you only have so much camera times. Monday Night Raw is only so many hours. And even if it's that long, how are you going to capture that attention? And if it's just the same thing over and over again, and it's whining, it's boring, no one's going to care. And that's the worst. That's go home heat, man. And that's what a lot of Democrats have right now.
Let's talk about now the guy who's, the kind of the biggest name in wrestling right now against all platforms of it. Like he's been in several different leagues, and that's CM Punk. Yeah.
Punk is the best talker on mic and has been since the last 15 years, since he came to WWE in the late aughts. Peaked with the pipe bomb maybe in 2011. It's, to my knowledge, the only wrestling promo so important. It has its own Genius page. Genius it used to be Rap Genius, but it explains what every song lyric means. That's how popular the pipe bomb was. He acknowledges he's a student of Roddy Piper. He's a Paul Heyman guy. Paul Heyman is the current best wrestling manager today. The same ideas about it. He always makes it about himself, and it's never about luck, and he's never fighting for anybody but himself. This is not complicated stuff, and it's worked forever. It worked in WWE. It worked even when he was in UFC, and he got his ass handed to him multiple times. It didn't hurt his popularity because he was always fighting for himself. And he's like, you know what? I lost. I gave it my best shot. There's no excuses. No excuses. Always fighting for yourself. Always willing to call out the horrible stuff, but not saying, yeah, it's bad because of that. Acknowledging that guy is a very bad person. He's willing to say, like, essentially, yes, Hogan's a racist. He's willing to reference the fact that the last guy that ran the place is Vince McMahon. What's going on with him right now? You were his favorite. That's a current promo right now in the last 2 months about this guy, Seth Rollins. It's like, yeah, you were Vince's guy. What's Vince up to right now? Well, he's under trial. Like, that's brilliant. He's doing the kind of stuff that you wouldn't expect to see on television, and he's only getting away with it because he's the most popular dude. That's it. He's not the biggest dude. He never has been. He's not a steroid guy. He is not John Cena, say Hulk Hogan, say your prayers, take your vitamins. He's the exact opposite of that. He's the straight edge atheist. Like, he is everything that is not supposed to work, and he's the most popular guy, save for maybe Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. But I'd say if you take him across the last 5 years with WWE plus AEW and the amount of headlines this guy's generated, there's no one compared to him. Maybe The Rock, but does The Rock count?
Not right now. No, he's too busy with like being a movie star.
He did wrestle at Mania, and he did have an appearance when they debuted on Netflix. But like, he still has a storyline with Punk in those two things. Like, him and Punk interacting at the WrestleMania press conference last year was very fun and exciting, and also garnered headlines. He's able to put himself in every single thing that matters, even when he's hurt. No one else has been able to do that. This stuff he's doing is very tangible too. There are lessons you could learn with literally every single CM Punk promo. And I'm not telling anybody to watch 3 hours of Raw. I'm not a masochist. Go on YouTube.
I think also just, what is striking to me about him too is that this is a guy who spent years away from WWE.
He was away from the ring. He was away from a WWE ring for almost 10 years.
Right. And then came back because, again, he is undeniably the most popular person, to the point where he's the guy who gets to call out management in ways that don't really even feel scripted or fake.
Exactly.
But they need him because they need the gate.
It feels real even when you know it's not. That's what, and it's these are the intangibles you can't teach about feel, right? But that's what Obama did. He made people feel, yes, we can. What are we yesing to can? What are we actually trying to do? That doesn't matter. It's about the feel. The tangible things don't matter. Every single election proves that. It's not a good thing, but it's real. If I can get you to feel, you're going to be in that camp forever. Or unless Yeah, I mean, how many people vote against their own interest? It's immeasurable.
I can't even remember like when the "What's the Matter with Kansas" came out. You know, like I mean, it's now just a cliche.
Yeah.
And also doesn't really help the narrative for the media when they go out to say, you know, a red state and say like, why do you support Trump? I mean, Trump is trying to cut like farm subsidies that won't so you won't be able to sell your soybeans at like market price to like somebody, and people are just like, I love the guy. I mean, he's my guy, you know, and you're right that the number of crossover voters, people who voted for Obama and then voted for Trump in 2016, it was striking to me. And it was because it was something that, you know, there was obviously something that each one of them was able to connect to people on a very fundamental basis, because it's not that I really don't think that people's overall, if they're just voting their economics, say, or their cultural values or their religious background or whatever, I don't think that there were that many fundamental changes from somebody like Obama, who's this like, you know, famously family man, right? Like the, you know, rocking the dad jeans type guy, and, you know, had this like very, you know, like stable world, you know, the environment to Trump. I mean, who's the opposite of that in his personal life and in his professional life. And, you know, I mean, it was even No Drama Obama, right? That was like, that was one of the nicknames. And so people were able to connect, and it wasn't because they agreed with them on all their issues.
One of his biggest controversies is he wore a tan suit.
Right.
Like, come on, man. Another interesting aspect of the Obama.
Did you say that just because I have sort of a tan herringbone jacket?
Biden, I'd say, looks like your president, period. When it comes to what in your mind's eye, when you think of what a president looks like, I'd say like him, Bush
James
one.
Madison.
Sure. There's like
Chester
an idea
Arthur.
of like, oh, there's a boring dude in a suit, maybe glasses. You know what I mean? Like that's Obama does not fit that at all, and Trump does not fit that at all, and neither does CM Punk. There's proof here that like you don't have to look the part. I don't care about looking the part. It's about feel. It's about inspiring, and that's tough. That's the biggest intangible that you can't really teach, but you know it when you see it. And brother, there's not a lot of I'm not seeing a lot of that on the Democratic side right now.
I think it's, you know, the one last thing about CM Punk is the you know, luck is for losers. You know, I think that, again, as a testament to that the Democrats don't exactly have a consistent message, is that some people are just like, just let Trump fail, just let him do all these things, and people they'll come around, they'll realize how bad it is. Some people are being more aggressive, some people are doing their own thing. But the thing that, you know, sticks out to me about this is that this is not a luck or happenstance kind of thing. You know, you're responsible for kind of your own image, whether you're Donald Trump, whether you're Barack Obama, whether you're CM Punk. And if you want to abdicate that and just think that people should support me because I'm a good guy and I have 25 years in public office and I've been honest and so forth, like everything has to be earned.
Yep.
And regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican, a Green Party guy, whatever, like it's very seldomly accidental, especially now, that you get you get this kind of success.
It's yes. It's tough to say you should operate like there is no God, like there are no masters, but maybe you should. It's really working out for this one specific wrestler, and it's really working out for this one specific president. And once again, it's not a left thing, it's not a right thing. It's a tangible lesson. Luck is for losers. There is no luck. There is no big whatever. And even if the guy with the big even if the guy in the back, the booker, the guy that determines like this guy's going to win, if you get a bigger crowd reaction, you actually win because you sold more merch and you sold more T-shirts, and now your check is bigger. That's actually winning. It's not about getting anything handed to you. It's not about having these roles. How are you getting the money? How are you getting your constituents the money? That is what's going to matter. And that's a tangible thing that no one's going to learn from. And it's so depressing.
Well, Brandon, I think that if maybe somebody can learn something from this discussion. I mean, because I think, the whole point of this podcast, and you were the first guest when we rechristened it, Political Theater, was that we wanted to look at where politics and other parts of culture overlap. And I think that this is a great example of that. Trump, Trump gets it as president. He didn't go to the Daytona 500 the other day because I think he's some big stock car racing fan.
No,
he knows that there were 100,000 plus people there in person, and that they would flip out when the beast did a lap.
Yeah,
like that. It's as simple as that. He was there for like half an hour. It wasn't like he wasn't there like kind of at the Super Bowl where he actually does really like football and wanted to be there for a big part of the Super Bowl. But I mean, he's inserting himself into parts of the cultural conversation that people connect to. That's how, because that's what's important to them, whether it's stock car racing or whether it's wrestling or whether it's football. He's a part of that, and again, that's part of the. Here's the guy driving the narrative. Everybody else is reacting to it.
Yep. You're 100% right. I've only given 3 examples with literally hundreds of hours of footage for people to study. I wonder if anyone will look at any of that. Or is it too red for them? And I think it's such a shame too, because when you look at the actual demographics of who watches wrestling, it's not left or right. It's the most center there is.
I mean, I would also just note that, I mean, one of the people who came to mind who had a fairly big part in a show, Glow, is this lion of the left, Mark Maron.
Who didn't watch wrestling before the show, though?
He may have not watched wrestling before the show, but again, not speaking for Mark Maron, I'm guessing he gets the appeal for a lot of people now after being a part of the show.
Sure. There are a handful of famous examples, and I mean, George H.W. Bush was friends with some promoters in Texas at the time. So there's a long history of politicians that maybe understand wrestling, but no one's operated at this level like Trump. And it's such a shame, because they're all right. All the answers are right in front of you. This is not complicated stuff. What's even more depressing is Musk seems to be picking it up better than any elected politician.
Again, anybody's free to learn the lesson if they want.
For now.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much for talking about this, and we'll have you on again for what topic? Who knows? Perhaps there will be some sort of development. But again, who knows? Left is for losers. We'll figure it out. But this will be the first time that you have been on the show since we started doing Words of the Week. This is probably going to seem like editorializing this Words of the Week that I am going to give, but I do think that it's just an observation. I opened up this book, the Congress Dictionary from years past. This is again, hard copy book, and it was just right there, and it just felt right. And that's rubber stamp Congress. What I think is funny about this is that this book dates back to the 90s, and so it's a statement, almost it's a photo or a snapshot of what people thought in the 90s in terms of congressional terms. So, rubber stamp Congress is a name given to Congress dominated by the executive branch. Self-explanatory. First used. This is what stuck out to me. Uncommon today. The term may have been created to describe Congress during the administration of Franklin D. Roosevelt. An early use appeared in the lead to a United Press dispatch in early 1938. A rubber stamp Congress is a menace to constitutional government, Senator Edward R. Burke, Democrat of Nebraska, last night told the New York Bar Association. So again, a Democrat saying that about his colleagues, a democratically dominated Congress who had a Democratic Congress to work with, or a Democratic president to work with, Franklin Roosevelt, as they were trying to navigate the Great Depression and the ensuing conflict developing in Europe that would become World War II. And still, he said, this is not a good thing if the executive branch just dominates Congress. So that's this episode's words of the week. So, Brandon, again, thanks for coming on the show, and we'll see you another time. And did you also want to do a little plug for Twin Peaks night? Because
there's a lot of crossover crowd.
Come on, you never know. You never know.
True. If you've ever read, recommend it if you like. It's a site we run, and it's full of essays, and there's a lot of David Lynch love on there. And this is our second annual Twin Peaks night on Thursday, February 20th. It starts at 10 p.m. It goes super late because David Lynch was a night owl. And it's going to be I'm cutting together 4 hours of Twin Peaks scenes and supplemental materials and like random tributes. There's a WWE about 5 minutes from 2017 when The Return came out, parody that I'll send it to you. Even if you don't know what's going on in the wrestling, it's a very lovingly done parody. And it's one of the things that's giving me hope that horrible things may be happening to a lot of the people in our orbit, but at least you could slowly kill yourself with cigarettes. So that's what we're going to be doing, and drinking coffee, listening to a lot of hardcore industrial music, because Twin Peaks season 3, episode 8 should be in the Louvre. It is a perfect piece of art, best piece of art from the 2010s, next to CM Punk's Pipe Bomb.
There you go. Any music by Lynch himself? Because
both stuff that's built to him, and then obviously the stuff that he co-wrote with Badalamenti, and the stuff that they did together in Thought Gang, and his kids band too, which played the show.
Excellent. So that is Thursday, February 20th at DC9, starting at 10 p.m. And again, doesn't seem as left field for people who listen to this podcast, because the week that David Lynch died, we did our own weather report when it was like 15 degrees out. Slightly different than his weather reports in LA. But
did you ever get to speak with him?
Never did. I went to a screening of Inland Empire, for which he did a Q&A at 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, did you stay awake for the whole film? One of the darkest films, like literally dark, not tonally dark, but because it was shot on a camera that a lot of people said wasn't good enough for film, and it's like 3 hours long.
Yeah, 3.5 hours long. Started at like 10 o'clock at night, so it was crossed over into midnight, and he was all there at the Q&A. I mean, he wanted to talk more about transcendental meditation in his book, Catching the Big Fish. I think Ann Hornaday, who was the moderator for the discussion with him, wanted to talk a little bit more about the film, but that's not what he really does. He talks about things he wants to talk about.
That's a good lesson that people could learn about. Keep the mystery alive sometimes. He was probably my second most famous interview I've ever done, was with Lynch. And he was exactly how you'd think he'd be, which was perfect. And it made me like him and the series so much more. And it made his art seem incredibly approachable. And I'd say that's the best part about Catching the Big Fish and all the other stuff that he does with the TM Foundation. It's just, none of this stuff is complicated, only if you want it to be. And I think that that's a lesson everyone could learn.
Great place to stop. Thanks, Brandon.
Thanks for having me. Good luck.